Welcome back to Figuring It Out with Rachel Lee. Today we're going to talk about something a lot of people struggle with quietly. Self-trust. Not the big, dramatic, reinvent yourself kind. Not the kind people write inspirational quotes about. I mean, the everyday kind. Trusting your own judgment. Trusting your intuition. Trusting what your body is trying to tell you. Trusting a feeling you can't fully explain. For a long time, I didn't trust myself. Not in relationships, not in choices, not in my career, not in the moments where I knew something was off, but talked myself out of it because I couldn't justify it logically. That's what I call the trust gap. The space between what your gut already knows and what you actually allow yourself to act on. If you've ever ignored a feeling because you couldn't prove it, this episode might just be for you. But let me back up for a minute. A lot of my self-trust broke during being a mother solo. When your past choices led you into unsafe relationships or situations you never want to repeat, you start doubting your own ability to choose well. You start questioning yourself before anyone can question you. And so as a solo mother, the fear becomes amplified. What if I choose wrong again? What if I miss something? What if I fail them? So I overcorrected. I kept men at a distance. And I did that by choosing men who didn't want closeness anyway. So it was kind of easy, right? But looking back, it's pretty clear it had nothing to do with them. It was about me. And at the time, I had no idea how self-trust impacted the type of relationships I would have. But that's the beauty of today, right? And just so you know, the lack of trust just didn't stay in my personal life. It spilled into my professional life too. Self-trust isn't selective. If it's missing in one area, it'll show up everywhere. Now, if you knew me at work, you would think I had it all together in some scenarios, right? But I played small at work in ways I didn't even understand were small at the time. I didn't always speak up in meetings, even when I knew I was right. I didn't really ask for raises or promotions that I was already doing the work for. I let people talk over me in meetings because, well, they probably knew more than I did, right? I treated other people's titles as more legitimate than my own inner knowing. The truth? Yes. People trusted me. More than I trusted myself, in fact. But because I didn't trust my own voice, I kept waiting for permission that never came. Then there was a moment, almost a decade ago, might be right around then, we'll say, that I didn't realize was self-trust until much, much later. I had interviewed someone for a position. It wasn't a true opening. It was nepotism disguised as a job posting. They wanted this person hired for whatever reason, and my role was to go through the motions. The second I sat across from them, I knew something was off, right? It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't obvious. I just felt it. Like, this isn't gonna work. Something is really off. And I couldn't articulate it. I had no evidence. I had nothing concrete to point to. So after the interview, I went to the higher ups and all I said was, I can't explain it, but it's a no for me. And because I couldn't explain it, no one really listened to that statement because they hired her. And for months after that, I kind of doubted myself, like, well, maybe was I making it up? Was it a feeling I had? I don't know. Anyway, fast forward a while, we'll say a year, just for purposes, right? Everything I felt in that interview room showed up exactly the way my intuition had warned me, that something was off. And it wasn't necessarily a behavior at work or comments or something, but we're just going to call it what it is, and that was undercover racism. And the first thing that people said was, "Don't tell Rachel." Not because I'd rub it in, but because they knew I do not tolerate racism, quiet or loud. And honestly, they were right. That could have gone sideways. But that moment taught me something. Back then, I didn't even recognize intuition as a form of self-trust because I thought self-trust required logic, evidence, data, details. FYI, it doesn't. Self-trust is intuition you haven't learned to believe yet. Years later, I had a moment where I made a decision purely from self-trust. It wasn't big or dramatic. It wasn't life-changing. It was a simple decision where I didn't ask permission, I didn't pull my friends, and didn't talk myself out of it. And that one decision showed me something. Self-trust feels like choosing yourself without needing a guarantee. Here's the other side of self-trust that we really don't talk about enough. Sometimes other people see your capability long before you ever see it in yourself. For years, I had someone in my life who encouraged me constantly. You should work for yourself. You should start your own business. You can do it. You're smarter than you give yourself credit for. Just start. Just do it. He believed in my voice when I didn't trust my own. He pushed me towards things I didn't feel ready for. He saw potential in places where I only knew survival. And now that he's passed, I think how proud he'd be. That I'm taking my health seriously. That I'm doing this podcast. That I've built a coaching business. That I'm using my voice in the way he always told me I should and I could. And if he were here, he'd be promoting this podcast harder than I even do. Because sometimes self-trust starts with someone else's belief until your own becomes loud enough. And maybe you've asked the question, how did we even stop trusting ourselves? What happened? Well, here's my take on it. We don't stop trusting ourselves because we're weak. We stop because life taught us to. Because early choices led to painful outcomes. Because we carried too much, too young. Can I get an amen for that? Because we learned silence was safer. Because fear felt responsible. Because intuition didn't sound professional. Because other people's opinions felt more reliable than our own. And that's how the trust gap forms. Quietly, slowly, and over time. So how do we rebuild it, right? How did I rebuild mine? It's always a work in progress, but rebuilding my self-trust wasn't anything dramatic, like out of a Hallmark movie or anything, although I do love Hallmark movies. It started with just tiny promises. Drink more water, move my body, go to the gym, start a podcast, keeping the small commitments to myself that no one saw. And each tiny follow through whispered, see, you listened. See, you followed through. See, we can do hard things. And that's how the trust gap closes. One small decision at a time. Before we wrap up, I want you to remember your intuition isn't random. Your hesitation isn't weakness. Your knowing isn't imaginary. And if something feels off and you can't explain it, trust that. But if something feels right before you can justify it, trust that too. Self-trust isn't built through perfection. It's built through consistency, through choosing yourself, even in the small, quiet moments that no one sees. Thank you so much for listening. If this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who needs it. And if you want to talk through your own trust gap, my DMs are always open. I'll see you in the next episode where we'll keep figuring it out. Take care of yourself and have a great week.